2, 1. Ding ding. Get wrecked, nerd. Anyway, so yeah, closing above 44.50 is good for their Vega risk, but it's not being able to gain any ground at 44.60 through 44.70 today is still really bad for the Bulls. That means it's going to be a rough grind for them to get any kind of meaningful foothold before SLD. They only have 3 days now before the CPI report, I believe. That's gonna be pretty tough. That also means that we're closing right at 44.50 on futures again, which we've got a small bounce here, but the failure to break higher, at least in the technicals, is not particularly bullish, and probably means that we're gonna see another failure back to the 44.35 level at least, or maybe even delta neutral, before we see a continued move up. The dollar stabilized a little bit today and came in down from where it was earlier, but still up above 105. Yen's pushing 735. USD JPY is still moderately stable. They pulled down on yields pretty hard today, but they didn't gain a lot of ground, especially after yesterday's 300 basis point moves up, right? Correlation pulled back a little bit, which is also not great for them. They want to stop this from happening, ideally. The more correlation moves up, the more likely that we're going to see volatility in the indexes increase and fall up. SPX down is the most likely outcome of that. Broad commodities still underperforming a bit. Wheat was up today, but oil down. So if you guys didn't know, the reason wheat is running is because Ukraine reported only 42,500 hectares planted out of an estimated 200,000 for the season. Meanwhile, South Korea is looking in the open market to buy 95,000 hectares of wheat, which is double Ukraine's supply for the year. So there's going to be some pretty intense food demand moving into the fall this year, right? And we don't have the winter harvest until spring, I believe, and that's gonna compound inflationary pressures. I don't know how much yet. Obviously, the amount of demand is gonna probably determine that over the next few weeks, but it's definitely going to be a problem. Wanted to take, okay, so yeah, so yields definitely contracted a little bit today, but still quite high. And a move higher is just going to drag the Dixie up even more. Oil's still holding 87 a barrel despite the drawdown today. It's up quite a bit. Dow overperformed a little bit today, but S&P, NQ, and Russell all down, with tech actually getting hit a little harder today. So how's the rest of this week gonna go? It's hard to say. I think the rejection here at 61 on the technical trend probably means that we'll continue to bleed overnight. I don't know how far down we'll go, but there's some news coming out of China tonight, I believe. That might have some effect on the Asian market session, but assume we could probably pull back to futures 44.40. And then without a break of 61, we're still quite far away from that test at 76 that would move us a little further out of the Vega risk levels. There's a good chance that even if they do push tomorrow, it'll be hard for them to gain back 44.90, which doesn't leave them a lot of time next week to try to make it above GN. And if more put interest is coming in, which it looks like it does, we may start to see GN move up higher. It hasn't because of all the call positioning at 4,500. But if that call positioning starts to trim back, GN's going to move further and further out of reach. And Gamma Max is already starting to move up as well. And Delta Neutral is getting closer to at the money as well. So everything's getting kind of tighter on the bulls as they're trying to run away from that Vega risk to the downside. Maybe take a look at GME and stuff before close. So GME got a little bit of liquidity back this morning, and they didn't do too much covering, but they did do some. It's starting to just peak below the line here. Remember, after these tips cross, it's usually a few days before we see any price action. Like here, it was pretty immediate, and here at earnings, but historically, if you go back, there's usually about like a 5-day like window from when the tips cross to when the price action's really realized. So, and given the speed at which these are approaching, I think we'll probably have a little bit of warning time. Right now, I mean, with OPEX only 6 days away, I would say OPEX is the most likely time for us to see covering here. I know there was a little bit of activity in the lending pool today, but no real effect on borrow rates or anything like that. Now, if we do see borrow rates on GME climb next week, that's a very good sign. But we haven't seen that yet. Is the failure to close the gap today naturally bearish? I mean, it's yes, because the market maker is going to take a loss, right? Anything else? I guess we could cover a couple before close. So Tesla. Kind of rejecting before 53 back to 50. This is a decent put entry here, but it's risky because it keeps bouncing, right? This is the third bounce off of the 40 like low 40 level in the last 3 days. So yes, you could get a put here, but be wary of the resistance that's being found to the downside around 43, 42. HE kind of looks like there's some covering starting to happen, but they're trying to cover very, very slowly over time. This was the peak. This is kind of like the peak of their shorting right here, right? And it's bleeding out, and they're slowly covering, and price hasn't improved dramatically, right? I mean, but they have a lot more to cover. So depending on if there's, any more bullish pressure on this, they could get pushed out really quickly. If call interest starts to pick up and the market maker has to start buying to leverage call interest on the chain, we can get, kind of a repeat of what we saw at the end of last week, maybe going into OPEX where there's a much higher concentration of interest. Anything else? Fubo? We could look at Fubo. Fubo looks like it's still got some slow, kind of meandering covering going on. It's not being realized very rapidly. And they keep trying to kind of claw it back every night. So yeah, it's still got a little bit of room to run. I mean, if it's gonna have like a big run up to like let's say like 390 or 460, then maybe this continues to get blown out. But here's my problem with it. It tends to perform with Russell really well. And if Russell starts dropping really hard, like if Russell has another 200 BPS down day, they might get a handle on this covering and, bring liquidity back to mean and start shorting again, right? So I'd be careful with it. It could be a good opportunity to sell covered calls, especially if it runs really hard. Docu? I mean, I sold some covered calls on it. I hope it goes back down. They have earnings, but I sold some covered calls at 56. I think if it hits 56, I'm okay being out of it for now. I don't know how their earnings are going to be. They lowered projections on the last earnings, and that saw their share price get crushed. Apple kind of bounced a little. Got a steady turnaround here. If we're going to see them try to pump indexes over the next couple days, Apple could turn around back to like maybe like back to like our prior PT at like 183. So if you're looking to get like a new short position on Apple and you got stopped out today, I know I did. This might be the entry you're looking for. If not there, like if it doesn't climb that high, maybe 80. It could reject on 80, depending on the amount of short call interest. Yeah, Fubo had a pretty okay day. KView with the breakdown below 21. I mean, I kind of want to go long the stock. Like I kind of care a little less about the call potential here, and I kind of just want to buy some at this point. This was a lot of shorting. Now this could very well mean that they're prepping to cover the short positions on it, and this may be, an effect of OPEX approaching, right? If a lot of their hedge interest starts to fall off on OPEX, They may want to cover their short positions before or going into OPEX on KVU. In which case, like 50% of the float is sold short right now. So this may be kind of like the dip before the rip scenario. If that is the case, this is I mean, I know it's kind of a new company and it doesn't have a lot of prior history, but they have quite a lot of established value that was spun off from Johnson and Johnson already, right? I mean, they have like an enterprise value of about 50 billion. They've got 700 million a quarter, 650 to 700 million a quarter in free cash flow, and they only have like 700 million in debt. So and a 3.57% dividend yield. I mean, it's kind of a sick deal with 10% margins. It's kind of a sick deal. If their margins grow 20-30% over the next 5 years, and they're like consumer non-durables, right? They're consumer staples, so it's not like it's like very exposed to recessionary pressures. It might not. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about buying some, like just owning some stock on it. Gotta go watch Docu. I have way too many shares. Can good China news pump SPX tomorrow? I don't know if China can push out any more good news. I mean, they've been trying really hard for a couple weeks now. They've got a new economic proposal every night, and HSI is right back down. Any chance that they pump SPX above 44.50 overnight so they have a better shot? Or is that not really possible? I mean, they can try. If they can get us above 44.75 in the overnight session, that's super advantageous for them going into next week. But they're really fighting an uphill battle right now. They've got to keep vol under control and pump simultaneously. It's a lot to ask for, especially when, credit spreads are collapsing and the dollar's skyrocketing. The economic conditions are not good for the bulls. So, like I said, they're going to keep trying to pump because they have to, right? That doesn't mean they're going to be successful. And if they fail and we fall below 4,400, it's put interest is stacked. Where do you see KV float short like 50%? Well, first of all, their options chain. Have you looked at that? Also, you probably have it on Fintel. Hold on. Fintel just has short volume ratios. Short interest percent of the float, 47.27. There. That's the NYSE short interest data. Seriously, the put volume all over the KVU chain today is insane, I'd imagine. This is sounding awfully dolly. Is it? Alright, that's enough talking to you guys. It's almost like 4:30. Get out of here. Go enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow.